Yes, he
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Thank you for joining us for another edition of Donnybrook. This is our first show in our 38th year. Yes, that's right. In 1987, this week, Martin Dugan and Rich Coster, Mark Vittert, and a couple of guys named Ray Hartmann and Bill McClellan launched the show on 9PBS, then known as KETC. So how about that? Who would have thought it'd be lasting this long? And we're so thankful for all your support. Let's meet the panelists who are joining us for this edition, starting with Sarah Fenske, executive editor of the Riverfront Times and its sister publications. Sarah's sitting in for Wendy Weiss. Bill McClellan, the aforementioned, he's with the Post-Dispatch. Ray Hartmann, you can find his column on Substack. He's the founder of the Riverfront Times. And from the St. Louis American, Alvin Reid. And Alvin, heavy hearts on this broadcast because we lost Kevin Jones, the chief operating officer of the St. Louis American, also the former president of the Missouri Press Association. Our condolences with you and the American team.
Yeah, it was a very somber day. Like I said, I had a little smile tonight, but I'm really sad. Kevin was a tremendous guy, a tremendous family man. Just helped take the St. Louis American to places I think that none of us really maybe could have believed it would have gotten to. Total team effort with Dr. Suggs. And I just, Kevin will be missed. And I think the ultimate compliment I can give to Kevin, one is that I often told him, I said, you're the only newspaper ad guy I really ever liked. And then two, while these are my fraternity colors, I am wearing black and gold tonight because Kevin was a proud Missouri Tiger, and he got to see his guys and win the Cotton Bowl. And Kevin, I already miss you.
And well said. And I would just add, you knew him so well and such close friends. I would add, I knew him less than well, but I knew him professionally, and there wasn't a smarter guy in town that in terms of dealing with the difficulties of a very tough time in publishing. He was so smart, and it's a great loss to the American and the community. Yeah, very smart guy.
Condolences to Kevin's family and all of his friends. Bill, we're going to move on to you for our first topic of the night, and that is Caleres. The shoe giant, formerly known as Brown Shoe, has decided to sell its 9-acre property, prime real estate, just a 5-iron away from I-170 on Maryland Avenue, to the Clayton Schools, effectively taking that beautiful piece of property off the tax rolls, and about $1 million in property taxes alone will be lost on an annual basis. So what do you make of this?
Well, I've seen some bad ideas in my time, but this one might be the worst. I've lived in Clayton since 1983, and both of my kids went to the Clayton schools. It's a great school system, and there's been kind of a near unanimity about, strong schools, and we've avoided the culture wars. And all of a sudden, this school board and the superintendent seem intent on throwing a wrench into the whole thing. I mean, the idea that they're going to spend millions of dollars on an additional campus when the school population is slightly down, and they're calling it an empowerment campus. And what the heck is an empowerment? Well, it's like inclusion. Oh, well, is the regular high school going to be non-inclusive? I mean, what's going on? It makes no sense. And how much money is this going to cost? The property is assessed at $33.5 million. And they say, well, we'll tell you what we pay after we close. I mean, they're going to get a backlash, I'm afraid. I've never seen in Clayton any organized effort against school bonds, but they're likely to get one now. I mean, they're throwing this money. And lastly, the school board elections have always been, 3 people running for 2 positions, and you can't tell who's who. And all of a sudden, we're going to have the culture wars. We're going to have people wanting to be against this woke idea of a empowerment camp. It's just the craziest thing I've ever heard. Terrible idea.
I think it's a great idea. So that may have been the craziest criticism I've ever heard. No, actually, I don't know enough about what it is yet because they haven't disclosed what it is. So I am not prepared.
Isn't that a hint, Ray, when they won't disclose what the heck it is?
Well, you've already decided it's woke empowerment. I don't know that it's that. I think there are a lot of functions that could be met. And as far as the downside to poor Clayton, I'm sure instead of doing this, we could just blight Clayton and give tax breaks to developers like they did to Centene and all this stuff. In other words, I think that
you know what? But think about this, Ray.
Let me finish.
No, hang on. If they had given a tax break to a developer like Michael Steinberg or Bob Clark or Cordish, and they were all interested in it, they would still be getting the current taxes, right? But they wouldn't have to pay the developers the incremental taxes for a period of time. Now, the city and the schools will get no money, nor will the county, nor will the library, nor will the health department, and all the folks who benefit from a property tax.
In the big picture of Clayton and St. Louis County, it's not going to have that much of an impact. And certainly the people it impacts most are the public schools, who obviously must think they know what they're doing with regard to that aspect of it. I think we should at least wait until, rather than just condemn it as for any reason. But it could be what? Could it be for robotics? Could it be for?
It could be robotics. But
what are some of the things it could be for? Because I mean, that's a good thing.
Well, why don't they say that, Ray? Instead of saying when the press asks them exactly what this is. Oh, well, we're not far enough along in the plan.
And I understand that criticism, but just to criticize him, Clayton can live without more retail development.
Right now, you don't live in Clayton, so you don't know. They're cutting back services right now.
Yeah. Oh, my God. Clayton is such a war zone. Oh, my God. You can't even walk the streets of Clayton.
This is about the school system.
I know, but it's a great school. Maybe they're trying.
The city of Clayton is also has a financial problem. They're charging for trash for the first time, as you know.
Oh, my God. Oh, poor Clayton. You know, I don't know how you can possibly stay there. This is the top-rated school district in the state trying to make itself better. There's that aspect. Now, I don't know if it will, but at least give them the idea that, terrible.
One reason it's such a top-rated school district is the community supports it.
And they may still support it.
And all of a sudden, we're having this attitude that we'll tell you how much it costs afterwards, and we won't tell you what it's about. Not smart.
Okay, we'll move on to the second topic of the evening. Something tells me we're going to get to this one again sometime. How about you, Sarah? I want to know about this Rock Island bike trail, walking trail, that was proposed by Governor Parson, of all people, and he wanted to fund it to be 144 miles between Franklin County and Henry County. And these are very popular, you know, now. A lot of people go on vacations and they ride bikes in Bentonville, Arkansas, and, of course, our own Katy Trail, and throughout the United States. But now a couple of candidates for governor, including Jay Ashcroft and Mike Kehoe, say, no, we don't want to spend $104 million for a bike trail. If cities along the way want to put in bike trails, that's fine, but the state shouldn't. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of see where Parsons' critics are coming from on this. You know, there was this sort of mad frenzy during the pandemic of what could we do that would spend a lot of money really fast, because the feds are just throwing money out there and they're trying to pump up the economy. You know, now 3 years have passed since the start of that pandemic, and the financial realities are setting in. There are a lot of needs in Missouri. There's a lot of badly underfunded state workers. You know, the prison system is in a terrible state right now. We have some awful benefits for people who need it. It's hard to say this needs to be the top priority. And I say that as someone who loves the Katy Trail. And coming from Cleveland, we have the towpath. Amazing.
I ride bikes too.
Yeah.
And I just think that, you know, this is one where, like, if our government in Jefferson City wasn't making so many just loon bin decisions and wasting money, chasing culture wars and all that, then you could say, like, I don't think $104 million to this stretch of a bike path. This is a guy who used to be on a parks board. I love parks. I love trails. Yeah. Then I could look at him and say, like, well, that's just a fiduciary decision. I can get with it. Just because they've been so just out of control lately, I still can't ignore the fact that they might be making a wise decision here. So once again, I have to be on the side of Kehoe and Ashcroft? Okay, yeah, that hurt, but I
think you're missing out.
I'll be on the side of Parson. I thought it was a good idea to have another bike trail.
I do too.
I would
Let's
like
get
to
those
say,
bikes off the streets.
may I say the words? I would like to defend Mike Parson on, and I realize that he and I are looking pretty woke on this, but I mean, I think it's great. And Katy Trail is the prototype. Believe me, I think this is, you know, obviously I disagree with Parson and the Republicans on trying to operate Missouri on a, you know, the ultimate shoestring all the time and being anti-revenue. But I think he's absolutely, this is a good idea.
I do
and
too.
I think that Missouri, maybe they can be persuaded at some point to relax their allergy to revenue.
There's a whole group of people out there who spend their vacations biking, and there's like a trail between Pittsburgh and Washington, D.C. People go to France, and Bentonville is full of St. Louisans who are going there because the bike trails are so superb. I think we're missing out.
The Katy Trail is the best.
What do you think, Ray? Actually, Tom Brokaw did say that. The Katy Trail is the best.
Katy Trail
and he knows, doesn't he? Tom Brokaw, NBC News.
Yes, he does.
What about you and Hyperloop? You've written in your most recent Substack column that Hyperloop is dead. A little noticed story, and this is the this was going to be the train or the pod that would have taken us
the tube
on some sort of pneumatic tube or whatever from St. Louis to Kansas City in 23 minutes. Many of us laughed at that. You think, all right, now that it's dead, let's start focusing on high-speed rail?
Yeah, I think, well, I'm a fan of high-speed rail. Again, I think that has to be done fairly incrementally in a state like Missouri because it's just, there's a lot of, I mean, the bullet train makes a lot of sense to me, but there's a lot of logistical issues. But the Hyperloop is just one of those, and I didn't really realize until I did the little research on it and I saw the item, which somehow didn't get covered much locally. RFT picked up my Substack, but it's like, let's not forget that as of 2017, it was a lead story in the Post-Dispatch, and I don't blame the Post. I mean, the governor of Missouri, Eric Greitens, was claiming that one of the things that was going to bring us the Amazon headquarters was the fact that Kansas City and St. Louis would very shortly only be 23 minutes apart. And I mean, if we don't look a little foolish on that in retrospect, it's just, and it's a different issue to have bid on their test track, but as far as we don't look so great on this, and it's just one more kind of thing that is kind of sad.
Well, Ray, we didn't do Hyperloop, and we didn't get Amazon, so there it is.
And you were Mr. Hyperloop, if I remember.
23 minutes to Kansas City.
Yeah, great.
Strap me into that, baby.
But Ray, you're talking about, you know, the media kind of drank the Kool-Aid on this Hyperloop thing. Everyone treated it as a serious idea when Elon Musk is not really a very serious person, and it wasn't a serious proposal. You're absolutely right about that.
I agree.
And yet you're looking at high-speed rail as like, oh, this could be the next thing. To me, I put that in the same boat. I lived in California when they kept promising we would get high-speed rail to San Francisco. This country used to be a country that could build things and pull off big projects. And I tell you, you need to read about what has happened in that project if you think there's a chance we can pull that off here.
I think we could. I think the high-speed rail would work. It's a straight line from here to Kansas City. Two, you know, you all need to get up off all the sister wives and housewives of Beverly Hills and all that. Look at the Discovery Channel. Theoretically, the Hyperloop would work, okay? Yeah. By theory, it works. So don't scoff at that. I mean, I'm just saying.
I scarf at that.
You're part of the problem, Alvin. You're the media that. Let me say this. I can understand high-speed rail between New York and Washington, D.C. People go there. Nobody's going to go from Kansas City to St. Louis or vice versa.
You get to the other side.
Because I go to Lawrence. But that's just me.
I mean, we're in two car-dependent cities, so you get to the other side. Then what are you going to do? You're going to rent a car for a couple of days?
Sarah,
in case you guys haven't followed your own newspapers, the governor is going to widen Highway 70 to the tune of $850 million. So high-speed rail is dead in Missouri.
I don't disagree with that. To Sarah's point, we are addicted to the automobile, and there's no question. Politically, I think there's very little will to do even incremental increases.
You're talking to
but I will say this. That doesn't argue that it's, and as Alvin pointed out, getting from St. Louis to Jefferson City reliably and quicker would be a good thing for people.
Who's going to go there?
Well,
Why would anyone go to Jefferson City?
If you could get there fast,
wake up. No, wait. No one wants to go there. Yeah, no one wants to go there.
Okay, no one wants faster. How about the legislature?
If it was New York with theater and shopping, that's one thing.
If you could get any place faster, there's a greater chance you would go there. And you're talking to the guy that was at ground zero of the X Prize and knew that was some folly.
Well,
so I can't be deluded.
I did
Alvin Reid, we're moving on.
Kool-Aid.
Alvin Reid, you can't deny in our next topic that homicides are down in the city of St. Louis. We had 200 last year, 158, no, 200 2 years ago, 158 last year. So that's great. It's down 21%. But the city is also reporting that other reported crime is down, everything from burglaries to assaults, and the list goes on. It sounds good, and yet, if you don't have a working 911 system, if the police officers are being told not to proactively follow crime, only respond to calls by the dispatcher, and if your police department has been giving low numbers to the FBI for 2 consecutive years, don't you have some real reasons to be suspicious of the crime numbers that come from the city of St. Louis?
Well, all that was going on a year ago and 2 years ago, so you throw all that in when the murders were at 200 and all the other crimes. So, yeah, I do buy it. I actually do think that crime was reduced over the past year. Now, that's great. Let's reduce crime another year and reduce crime another year. So I'm not going to be skeptical of what that was reported. I'm not going to be skeptical of the chief that came from someplace else and was going to be a horrible chief.
I'm still not sold on it, Alvin. No, and I think crime is down, and it's down mostly all around the country.
Right. Not Kansas City.
No, not Kansas City.
St. Louis.
So we don't have to, even if we could get there in 23 minutes.
Why would you go to such a dangerous
I think crime is down, but I'm not so sure that the chief is the reason. I mean, I tend to think that police are supposed to be arresting criminals, not necessarily stopping crime.
Well, and I think
I agree with you. I do agree.
I've said for a long time, I think focusing just on the murder rate is not a good strategy, because most people are affected by a broad range of crimes, carjacking, assaults, and break-ins, and so forth. And I can go back to the early 80s when I lived in Shaw neighborhood, and I got my car stolen, and it was a little break-ins and stuff, and it was, even then, it was like, we got bigger fish to fry. So it's not like this is something new, but I think the chief seems like he's doing a fine job. What I'm writing about actually tomorrow is, in Substack, is what's amazing and worrisome is there's going to be more effort by the Republicans to seize control of the police in St. Louis, and the lack of oversight, the lack of even a civilian review board is way worse than people realize. And so I think the city has to do a better job of having civilian review, in which case we might know a little more about how the police department's doing. But I think the crime being down is a good story.
If I could speak as a city resident here, just had to get that in there.
Holier than us.
I was a city resident for a long time.
I'm living in the middle of it, and I do think that these major crimes are down. And I think I do give credit to the chief. I think a lot of us city residents do. And right now, if you're calling 911, they are answering. They are starting to make some big strides in fixing that system, and people feel really happy about that. I do think the next frontier is going to have to be, there's a lot of these broken windows, quality of life type crimes, where I know so many people who just in the last couple weeks have gotten, the tires have been stolen off their car, their cars have been stolen, their cars have been broken into. There's still a whole low level of things that people are very frustrated about. I think city residents, a lot of them are in a very sour mood right now, but I hope that now that the chief has gotten a handle on some of the bigger things, they can start to actually focus on some of these things, which haven't been, nobody has detectived them in a long time in the city.
Why do our 4 panelists trust the police department suddenly? Because we know, thanks to Josh Renaud of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, 2 years, the police department could not give accurate stats to the FBI. 1 year, sending stats to the FBI, which became permanent, that eliminated an entire month of crime. And you would think they would have learned from that. But the next year, they did the same thing. They lost 3 months. And now we find out, thanks again to the Post-Dispatch, that the police department says, I can't give any stats about where crimes are occurring to St. Louis University or the reporters. But we find out then The same police department has been handing those stats to Washington University, slipping. So I don't trust this police department when it comes to numbers at all.
I just think that the overall numbers probably add up, so to speak, even with all this falderall going on or whatever, because I think it shakes out. I really don't think that they are just jimmying the numbers. I don't. And as for them picking Wash U, I mean, like, you know, you got to ask Wash U. Right?
But they were telling former next up guest Ness Sandoval, we can't give you those numbers. We cannot crunch precisely where crimes occur. At the same time, they told Sandoval of SLU that they were handing these numbers over to Wash U.
I think this is a giant bureaucracy that isn't always particularly well run, and I think, you know, they're not giving this granular level to people, but I don't hear anybody, and there's plenty of critics within this police department who I think would have various people on speed dial if it were the opposite. Nobody's saying they're lying or juking these things.
Right,
I think it's more and more computer issues.
Right,
Yeah,
it would be nice.
Crime is down.
And by the way,
they're maybe trustworthy. How do you know that the numbers are down if they can't figure out their own stats? And if maybe 911's better, but you can't deny that the police officers have been told in the city of St. Louis, no proactive policing. Only go on calls when you're called by a dispatcher.
Okay,
if you see something, don't respond
so
to it.
when people get murdered and they're throwing them in the Mississippi River or something?
No, I agree. The homicide numbers have to be accurate because a dead body sadly is a dead body.
There's a lot more people in jail right now. If you look at the numbers of people in the City Justice Center versus a year ago, there's a lot of violent guys who are going to be waiting a long time for their trials. I think that's had a big impact on a lot of these numbers.
Well, I don't know about that. I will say that, of course, Wash U is in Clayton, and you know how rough Clayton's getting. So, I mean, maybe
it's also a new city.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. But, I mean, it's a tough Clayton.
Sarah Fenske, the governor, in an executive order this week, said that 6 nations, and I guess they would be China, Cuba, Russia, South Korea, Iran, Venezuela, that's correct, cannot buy agricultural property within 10 miles of a military installation in Missouri. This, the year after there was that spy balloon from China going over the United States.
Yeah.
Are you with the governor on this one?
You know what? I'm with the governor. How often do I say that on this show? But, you know, this to me seems like a nice, common sense kind of solution to something. We know China is trying to spy on us, wants to spy on us. Did they care much about Missouri? I don't know. But having a 10-mile zone and particularly carving out these foreign adversaries, not just, you know, to try to stop our friends from Mexico or something dumb that you could see the Missouri legislature trying to do, this makes sense to me.
Well, it does. I mean, sure. I mean, no problem. Don't sell land to China. It's really, now this has been around a while. It's interesting if you read like in the national press, there's suddenly a whole bunch of states, almost all red states, a bunch of, like half of all the red states are doing this very thing now. They've been talking about it for years. I thought they'd already done it. No problem with that. I think there's like 40 million acres that the Chinese own or something in the country. Fine, but this is mostly politics. And the downside a little bit, and again, it's fine, but there have been Asian Americans and others expressing a little concern that this sort of narrative spills over into some other areas that aren't so great. So the substance of it's fine.
You know,
I'm just saying, and I think they're right, that we maybe want to kind of slow our roll a little bit.
I was in Vancouver a couple years ago, and they have a huge problem with all these wealthy Chinese people coming in and buying land. Yeah. And not for spying purposes or anything, but it's sort of like Saudi Arabians. If they wanted to buy big chunks of St. Louis or Vancouver, anything, you know, it just doesn't seem healthy to me.
It's not good in cities like Vancouver. People can't now afford to buy condos there, you know.
Right. I mean, it was a huge issue. The Chinese buying, and the price doesn't matter. We'll say whatever.
I believe you are the international hatred at this table.
Not me.
Oh my gosh! I know somebody's name on about an acre in Kirkwood, and if Cuba wants to buy it for $5 million, you can drone yourself crazy.
A foreign adversary, Alvin?
There you go. That's fine. North Korea, fine, no problem.
There is a guy, I forget his name, he's living in North St. Louis, and he has been charged with espionage working with the Russians, right? Am I right?
So wait,
that seemed a little bit.
All right, so if the Chinese wanted to buy half of North St. Louis, nobody would stop them, right? They'd be cashing that
What
check
are we
tomorrow.
saying? Are we saying? I'm sorry. Are we saying that foreigners can no longer own property?
I think that there are
that's
foreign
what you
governments who
always
want to
say.
infiltrate the United States.
No, but I'm talking
Okay, that's
about
enough
any
out of you guys.
property.
We have to go to the letters and see what people had to say about last week's show. Who's protecting the kids that do the right thing and want to learn? Nobody, not even the teachers. They're too busy with the distractors. That from Dawn Shaver of Millstaff. Thank you, Dawn. Tom Schneider, the former mayor of Florissant, wrote, I believe infrastructure is the second most important government responsibility after law enforcement. I-270 North was the largest MoDOT project in 10 years and one of its most innovative. The priority was put on safety, volume, and the replacement of antiquated intersections with modern traffic-engineered interchanges. Kudos to MoDOT and to the state for getting it right. And John Gunther, architect, wrote, Charlie, thank you for expressing your concerns over the extensive use of stone riprap on the I-270 project and beyond. Regrettably, the art of landscape and its many benefits appear to have gone out of favor, impacting the potential beauty and environment of the public realm. Mr. Gunther was the designer of the Alberici building on I-270, I-170. You can write us, care of 9PBS, 3655 Olive Street, 63108. Don't forget to use hashtag DonnybrookSTL on Thread and Twitter. And you can call the 9 line at 314-512-9094 while listening to your favorite podcast source, Spotify, Apple, TuneIn, and Google Play. Thanks so much to Sarah Fenske. We'll send her kudos for joining us today. Maybe not kudos. I can hear the criticism already. Thank you very much for joining us. Hope you join us next week.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.